Hey everyone, this is Michael Chow. I thought I'd go through quickly how to set up new features in siuba and the full process to develop features. So I'm going to be working pretty quickly, but I thought it'd be good to maybe just give people a glimpse into the process. So for context, somebody asked about implementing two functions, pivot longer and pivot wider. For context, these are functions in the tidyr R package that help you reshape data. Um, so I'm going to basically go through cloning the repo quickly, setting up the new features and stubbing out tests in siuba, and then I'll push it as a branch that anyone could pick up and develop if they want. So I'll clone the repo. Oh, you know what? I already did. So here's the repo. Basically, I did this. Well, that's rough. Git clone siuba. Then I'll cd in. One thing to note is I use virtual environments and they activate automatically. So anytime I enter a Git repo of a certain name, like siuba, it will activate the virtual environment. For me, it's in the virtualenv folder. So because there's a virtual environment in this folder called siuba, it'll activate when I enter any Git repo named siuba. So that's that. Usually the environments are created from these requirement files. Sometimes I'll make updates though to them as I go. So periodically I just burn down the old virtual environment and refresh. All right, so just for context, there's also this docker-compose file. Basically what it does is it just runs a Postgres server. This is necessary for siuba's tests. So I'm going to start docker-compose up. So we have the database. It's on, so inside this instance, it's running on port 5432, but on our laptop, it's this 5433. And I'll probably open a Jupyter notebook too. Oops. Oh, so, this is one thing. I'm not in it's not in the siuba virtualenv anymore. So, and I can tell because of this. All right, so that's running. Let's see, for context, so in this issue, they mentioned pivot longer, pivot wider. So what I need to do is basically go to the tidyr repo. Oh. Okay, that's, all right, well, we got there. And then I'm just gonna pull up, not that, I'm gonna pull up the test. So it'll be in the test folder. Make a new tab. And then I think, yeah, wait. So I might just, depending on how much work this is, I might just stub out one. I'm also not sure. Okay, great. So this one doesn't have much. So we just need pivot long and pivot wide. I'll probably start by stubbing out one and see how far I get. So the other thing is that siuba has, let me go back to this. So this is the package. There's an experimental folder. So I'll put it in there for now. This only holds the experimental datetime function and functions and the experimental fast grouped operations. Oh, let me also make a branch. So I'll do pivot funcs. All right, so then essentially we just want to, in the experimental folder, maybe make a, yeah, I'll just call it pivot. So that's that. And then I use Vim for everything. So I'm going to make I'm just going to call it well, let's just stub it out in the init file. We can always move things. Okay, So actually that's dumb. No, this is fine. Okay. So the init will just hold everything for now. For context, where in the experimental folder, maybe a good example is this date time script. So we'll use, or actually let me pull up the verbs. So for context, pivot wider, pivot longer are similar to these functions, spread and gather. If you look, these are pretty simple functions. This is exactly, when you use spread in siuba, this is exactly what it, what it uses. So if I go here, that's what these functions are. So import spread uses it like this. The key is that there's a special decorator called single dispatch 2. So essentially I would do something like this. Let's do pivot longer. And then we've got to fill that in. So let's see. And then single dispatch 2 is defined in, I think actually this, right now it's defined in this this folder. So it'd be from siuba.dply.verbs import single dispatch 2. You might have guessed single dispatch 2's name will almost certainly change. It'll probably be moved from this folder also to a more general spot. So we've got this set up. I think it's worth noting, actually, I think we can even import this. So import pivot longer. Nope, I think that maybe the ellipse isn't allowed. So let's do args quargs. Oh, there's sorry, from the example. Great, so we can import it. This is also kind of a funny thing. I think in pandas, there are a few ways to refer to a data frame, the class. We're just doing it off the pandas package, the top level package for now. Okay, so we've got pivot longer. Let me go to the tests. There's also a good, let me try opening. Can I open a new RStudio? Let's see. All right, whatever. Let's just open this one. So, if you go pivot longer, I think there's a vignette. So, yeah, vignette pivot. They've got some pretty good examples. Actually, we can pull it up here. Tidyr pivot vignette. Great. So this introduces us to some of the key concepts. So the first one will be, I think, similar to how gather is used. So we take this wide data, and these columns become entries in a new column, income. The key, I think, reason why this request is open is that it also implements a lot of other behaviors for sort of unpacking data that's coded inside column names. So for example, like this one, notice that this one's also coding a variable, which is week number in the columns. So you might want to sort of extract that data also. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up a test script. This is why I put it in its own folder. We'll just add some tests here. So I'll do test pivot. Sure. And then go. Oh, there we are. So, okay, and then let me think about this. So I'm just gonna import, I mean, we don't need to import pytest yet, but let's just do it. And then let's just mock out our first test. So test that can pivot all calls to long. So one thing we can do is we can actually copy out. Normally I don't copy out the strings to these tests, but let's see. So pivot calls to long. For context, we can add, if we add a string here, it's similar to this. It'll print the string out when we run the tests. So I'm actually gonna just copy this in. I'll replace it piece by piece. So the one thing is in siuba there's also a helper function because writing, just to make it a little easier to read data frames, I think it's here. Yeah, this is a really dumb wrapper to create data frames. Essentially, you can do this. So x equals 1, 2, y equals 3, 4. This is equivalent to doing something like this. The reason I made this is because in the test we create so many data frames. It's just having it be a little more readable is super helpful. All right, so and then pivot longer df in siuba. Normally we do something like this. So the one thing is that in siuba it'd be something like this. Another consideration is whether to actually use this in the test. Sometimes it's useful not to use these kinds of high-level objects, but let's just keep going. So, and what I mean by that is we can actually literally create what this underscore object is by doing something like this: symbolic underscore equals symbolic. And that'll ensure we're not passing around kind of this global symbolic object. It's a pretty irrelevant detail though. So let's see. So they expect that I think that, let me pull this up. So what I should do is I should just run these. Let me close this stuff. All right, so I can just paste this in. And then, so you can see checking the names, checking that the name column equals essentially because this is x and y, it's just making sure it's x, y, x, y, and then checking the value column. So what I'll do is the same. So the first thing was checking the names. One thing we can do is insert like df.columns. I actually don't know that we could do this, so let me see. The other thing is that pandas actually implements a full-on from pandas.testing import assert frame equal. We could actually just check that it equals a target data frame. So we could say something like, let's see. So we could say, sometimes I do this, source, destination. So the source is x, y. The destination would be something like, let's see, name value. So name equals x, y, x, y. Value equals, looks like 1, 3, 2, 4. All right. So it's basically, it's unpacking by walking along the rows. So first column, first row, second column, first row, and then it goes down a row. Okay, great. So, well, let's just see. So as a, one thing we could do is as a test implementation, we can just, this is a basically just gather behavior right now. So we can start with that. So what I'm going to do is, and then, oh, sorry, technical issue. Let's see, so, wait. They're just using the defaults. Let me pull up the signature. Oh. So these are its arguments. Yeah, let me just pull these out. Let's see. So maybe we can just do this. Let's see. Ooh. Great. And then do that. It's pretty interesting. Okay, so this will need to be indented a bit. Ooh, that's not right. What's happening? I forgot how to indent. Oh, crap. There we go. So we'll just leave it like this for now. I don't think that's actually the right formatting. Actually, I can fix it. I think it's 4 spaces. I need to turn my, whatever. So names to name, values to value. So the mapping to gather is, let me check the examples. Yeah, so gather has measure and value first. That's names to values to. So names to values to. And then gather uses a different syntax for selecting things. It's this thing right here. So, but I think that in dplyr, you can't use essentially this. Notice these are 3 different arguments. In dplyr, there's just the, as far as I know, the one. So what has to happen, right now we can pass it in, fine. But basically this approach doesn't work the same in pivot longer. All right, let's just do this. So for now, we'll just stub it out like this. We can't, it would be bad to pass a Python list here because those can be mutated. So what we'll do is we'll pass a tuple. More commonly, you might pass actually none here. Okay, this looks, I think this is right. So Now what we can do is, where am I? Okay, so we can test this out. This should be, okay, so this would be result. Actually, let's, yeah, whatever. So assert frame equal, actually I'm gonna call this whatever. Okay, so that the output, that the result matches the target output. So this should be all we need. Let's see. Something terrible will probably happen. Yeah, let's see. Experimental. It's interesting. Let's see. Huh. So, am I using, which pytest am I? Great. Oh, no. Oh, sorry, I need to, the virtual environment wasn't active again, so it looks like in siuba also I'll need to make some updates to versions of pytest. So cool. All right, well it ran, and then the last thing is we need to import pivot longer. So I'm going to relative path. Let's see. Actually don't know if this works. Let's see. Great. And then gotta fix this. All right, we're getting closer. Pivot longer, takes the data frame. Let's see. Oh, we didn't pass data in. Let's see. So, okay, close. Oh, interesting. So our gather, it actually works in a different way. So, it looks like gather's working by column. Notice it's walking down, so the x's are grouped together and the y's are grouped together. I'm curious if that's also in let's see. Yeah, okay, so that's an interesting difference between pivot longer and gather is pivot longer walks down the rows. So it goes, right, this value, this value, this value, this value. Gather walks down, it looks like the column. So that's not a, that doesn't kill us, but it definitely won't work for stubbing out this test or kind of easy wins with pivot. So what's the easiest way to do this? It'd be nice to just implement really basic pivot functionality. I'm curious about, so I think gather just uses melt, right? And that's one of the big strengths we have here, is that we can just use the melt function and get like 90% of what we need. It's going to be a little bit tough since gather does things that are not that are different from melt. It's going to be a little bit tough to do. So one thing we can do though for now is we can test the data frames. I think we can basically sort the data frames before we test them, just to know, do these data frames have matching rows, even if the rows are in a different order. So let me double check. Oh, what's happening? Okay. I think that there either is an option or siuba is implemented an option. So all right, I'm not sure. So I'm not sure if it's implemented, but I know siuba has it. So the reason siuba needed it is that SQL results aren't always in the same order. So I think it's assert frame sort equal. Yeah. Let's do that. So assert frame sort equal for now. Let's just make sure it works. I would imagine that somewhere in pandas that's implemented, since I'm guessing they have to do similar things, or maybe ibis, another library that does both SQL queries and sort of operations on top of pandas. All right, but we've got the test passing, so that's a big win. Cool. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to just note that I'm going to put a link back to the source code. So let's see, something like this. So sorry, I'll clear some of these tabs in a sec. Tidyr, it's probably pivot longer. Let me double check the link. Test pivot wide, test pivot long. Yep. Let's just copy the link straight out so we don't screw anything up. Okay. Cool. So that's what we got. I'm going to move this import to the very top because it's basically the thing we're testing. Nice. Okay, so we've got it. Cool. And then I'll commit it now. Actually, let's add the other. Oh, that's not the right. Yeah, we have to add the file. So we could have just also done, I think, add dot, but I'm actually going to put draft here. Normally I rebase the drafts out, or I will squash, which means you smash all the commits into a single commit. Cool. All right, so that's pushed. The reason I want to push now is so siuba will run tests on Travis. and then I can keep stubbing out as I go. So let's see. So the next one is, oh, I'm going to put a to do here also. So let's put it at the very top. Wait, let's just put it here. So I'm going to move it way up. And the gist is that pivot longer results, pivot longer rows in different order from gather. Currently using an order invariant, row order invariant for form of test should fix to conform to pivot longer. Cool. That was a pretty weird sentence. All right, how many of these are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, well, we're definitely not going to make it all the way through. There's also this other aspect of pivot longer, which is it takes a specification that would be worth stubbing out. I'm going to see, maybe hopefully I can get through like 5, at least stubbing out 5 tests. I'll set the ones that don't work to skip. So let's see, I'm going to maybe shrink this a bit. Okay, so this is test values interleaved correctly. We can also, it's probably worth formatting these data frames, maybe? Maybe not, though. Yeah, so they're actually, and it's probably worth adhering to this convention that the output is named PV. So this one is essentially similar to the other. So in Python, remember it's 0 index, so instead of 1 to 3, we'll do 0 to 2. That should be just all of these results. One kind of funny thing about this test is it's essentially this one right here, but it's just a more restricted form test. It only has the 1 equality. So in a sense, I think they're doing a bigger test here and then one that's more specific. So this one we could make another data frame. It might just be worth doing exactly what they've done, like pv.value. That's the series. The other question is if we want to check types and stuff like that, we might actually just want to do like toList equals there's some room to decide what's best. I'm also going to change this to be a very explicit form of grabbing the column. All right, so that, I think it's probably going to fail. Let's see. And maybe while I run the, while I add some other tests, I'll actually run all of siuba's unit tests, just for sanity. So yeah, great. Oh, this is, oh, you know what? The other thing is that in Python, this says get columns 0 and 1. So it says get from 0 up to, but not including 2. What we'd have to do is we'd have to do this. Yeah. There's kind of an open question about that syntax though. Pandas implements two different behaviors. Let me just show. Yeah. So you can either use emptycars.loc, in which case 0 to 2 gets 3 columns. Oh, no, you can't. Oh, you can't even do this slicing, but you could with iloc. So that's basically what we're doing. You could, if the columns were named literally like 0, 1, and 2, I think that you could. Let me just try. So I'm going to grab 0 to 3. I'm going to do small.columns equals. And then I think if I do, so now note that the columns are literally named 0, 1, and 2. These aren't strings, they're the actual names. So I think if we do 0 to 2, it'll, yeah. So notice this is kind of a funny thing though. If we use iloc, it says it does what Python would do for indexing. It gets 0 and 1. If we use loc, it's inclusive. It's kind of a funny pandas behavior. It sort of makes sense. I think the gist is you should just maybe never have columns that are numbers for names in a data frame. So yeah, we're grabbing 0 up to 3. This will fail because of the ordering thing again. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do pytest.xfail. I think that we can't. I don't think so. Skip lets you put a custom message in. I don't think pytest xfail lets you put. Oh no, yeah, you can. So let's see. I'm gonna do to do fix order. Nice. Oh, that wasn't it. Oh, sorry, pytest.mark.xfail. So the gist is that anything, any of the decorators you use in pytest need to come off mark, but we could have run, like if you want to fail from the test, you would do pytest.fail. Cool, so that failed. The other thing, I don't think we can do a message. Let's see. I think with skip you can, with xfail maybe you can't, but it'd be really nice if we could. Yeah. So can't do that. Let's see. So I mean, we could skip it too. The nice thing with xfail is that it'll notify you when it surprisingly passes, which is useful to see. So, all right, we got that. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm going to run siuba's tests. Actually, we can run them in. So, pytest siuba. Oh crap, that's not what we want. This should be fine. If I pass this x, it'll fail. It'll just stop after its first failure. If I pass pdb, it'll open a debugger, just for context. I should also minimize this because it'll drive me crazy when I am writing stuff. All right, so we did this one. Actually don't know what this is. Let's see. Oh, this is another spec one. I'm gonna do test add multiple columns. I might actually put spec here just to identify ones coming off the spec. So what I'll do is I'll define the data frame. And then this is the spec. I don't know. this is actually a pretty big area to explore for doing this is defining these specs with pandas. Do we want, so the thing is a pandas data frame is slower than a tibble to initialize, so it might not be a great idea depending on how important the tibble is for the spec. In Python we might want something, I'm actually not sure how important the table form is, if that makes sense. Actually it's probably pretty important, so let's just do this. Rather than a period, I'm going to use maybe an underscore. That makes sense. So in R, basically a variable name can't start with an underscore, which is why they use periods a lot. But it can start with a period. So name equals x, y, value equals v. My computer's, I don't know if you can hear it, but it's doing a lot of work. Is this the right spec format? All right, and then we do something like this, I guess. I'll write it out, but I'll comment it. Well, let's just stub out pivot longer spec. I think that the other thing is that I'm not sure pivot longer spec is it's actually not an S3 method, it's just a function. So in R there are sort of special functions that will do different things depending on the data they receive. That's essentially like what pivot longer is in here, why we wrapped it in single dispatch 2. It doesn't seem to be an issue, so I'm gonna do pivot longer spec data. Let's see. Yeah, data spec names repair. Let's just copy this for now. I need to make this bigger. Seems okay for now. And then so I'm going to what am I thinking? Oh, I'm just gonna pass. I don't know yet. So that's that. But at least now we can import it. We can pretend like it's doing something here. Cool. So df spec equals spec. And then I wonder if what's the best way to check the names of a data frame? I'm not sure. One way we could do it is, this is probably not the easiest way to do it, but just convert the names column. So this is in the data, columns is a series. We can convert it to a list of column names, and this will actually just check, do these lists contain the same values or values that are equal to each other. So I'm gonna xfail it. Cool. So I think the tests finished. I'm gonna pull them up. Cool. So there are 1,800 tests. They all passed. It should have run the pivot tests. Cool. All right, so we're cooking. Running low on time. All right, let me just keep, maybe try to add like 2 more. So, preserves original keys. Sure. And then, great. And then I should probably, the other thing is after this I'll look more closely at the tests and the vignette just to get a sense for kind of the order they're testing things in and what they're trying to do. Again, this would be something like y to z. Notice, and going back to the topic I mentioned about pandas and indexing, notice that when the numbers do it, we do it with numbers, it's like iloc, because that's really the only situation where numbers consistently make sense to index by. When we do it by labels, it is inclusive. So it says get y through z, including z. That's more of a pandas quirk. But the upshot is that this ends up being very similar to Python, right? This slicing is similar to what you do in a list. This doesn't really have an analogy anywhere in Python, so it's probably not crazy for it to include z like pandas does. All right, so yeah, there's going to be a lot of this. We'll probably want to wrap these in something. X, wait, that's not, did I go to the wrong? Oh, I see. So this one doesn't pivot X, it's just Y and Z. So X stays as a column in the data frame, Y and Z get pivoted into name and value. So I would call that maybe like unpivoted or unindexed keys or something. And then they're checking X. So this will almost certainly fail again. There's also an assert series equal method, but I'm gonna do this real fast. Wow, let's think about this. Yeah, so this will fail again because of the ordering issue. We could do a check of series equality. That's probably a good idea to make sure that types are preserved and things like that. I think it's assert series equal. Let me see. I could just try running it. Yeah, assert series equal. Let's do that. So assert series equal. I'm gonna maybe put these here, and then so this would be something like well, we could do this. So xval equals 1, 2. This is probably unnecessary. Oh, let's actually just do this. So dfx. I think this is let's double check. Yeah, and again, so this is actually exactly right. In R, this repeat does exactly what we want. So it puts the duplicated elements next to each other. So it was fun. Yeah. So 1, 1, 2, 2. We have 1, 1, 2, 2. So great. The one funny thing is it duplicates the index. I think that's actually, for pivot longer, exactly what we'll want to do. I'm going to put a note, though. I'm going to add it to the top. So just for simplicity, I'm going to put need to be careful about index should preserve indices. That's indices for original. Should preserve original indices for rows. Great. So this will probably fail. Also, just gonna mark it. Let me run to make sure, and then I'll have to run. So oh, cool. Yeah, so we've got 4 failing tests. That's great. Let me the one last thing I want to do is I want to glance at the siuba repo just to show I think Travis will have run the tests. Let's see. Oh, where's the, wait, go to the branch, sorry. So yeah, ran the latest commit, everything passed. Cool, I'm gonna set this maybe as work in progress. Pivot wider, pivot longer. All right, cool. So hope this was useful to see. If you have any questions, feel free to open issues on siuba. I'll try to do a little bit more here to stub it out. If people are interested in picking it up, I think it's a great issue to take up. It's a pretty challenging one, but I'm also interested in stubbing out other issues for people. So if there are useful things you'd like to see, feel free to open an issue. I'm happy to help either stubbing out PRs or discussing good ways to tackle things. All right, thanks.